Welcome to Meet Patel Audiobooks. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. Let's begin.
Chapter 41, A Circumflex Euros, the new ranking. The news spread through Westbridge Medical Center faster than Ethan expected. Professor Adrian Cross had praised a resident. Again, for most hospitals, that wouldn't be remarkable. For Westbridge, it was practically front-page news, especially because the resident wasn't from Westbridge. He was from St. Rowan, the same hospital many elite institutions had once overlooked. Monday morning arrived, and with it came the monthly evaluation meeting. Nearly every resident attended. Conference room buzzed with conversation. Most discussions centered around one topic, the rankings. The latest evaluations would be announced today. Ethan sat beside Noah Bennett. Neither appeared nervous. Both were. The large display activated. Monthly resident evaluation. One name appeared after another. Then the top three. Third place, Lynette Carter. Score, 91. Applause followed. Then, second place, Noah Bennett. Score, 92. The room became quieter, because everyone knew what that meant. Only one position remained. Ethan's heartbeat accelerated. No way, surely not. Then, the final result appeared. First place, Ethan Vale. Score, 93. Silence. Absolute silence. Several residents stared at the screen. Others immediately looked toward Ethan. Even Noah looked surprised. Not upset. Just surprised. Because for the first time since arriving at Westbridge, a resident from St. Rowan sat at the top of the rankings. A month ago, nobody would have believed it. Now it was reality. The applause started slowly, then grew louder. Professor Cross remained expressionless. Yet Ethan noticed something. The slightest nod. Almost invisible, but definitely there. For Professor Cross, that was basically a celebration. After the meeting ended, dozens of residents approached him. Congratulations. Questions. Conversations. The attention felt overwhelming. Until Noah finally rescued him. Enough. The Westbridge champion stepped between Ethan and the crowd. He still has patience. Everyone laughed. The group finally dispersed. As they walked down the hallway, Noah spoke quietly. Enjoy first place. Ethan looked toward him. Why? Noah smiled. Because I plan on taking it back. The challenge was clear, and Ethan couldn't stop smiling. The rivalry continued. End of Chapter 41. Chapter 42, A Circumflex Euros, the impossible case. 3 days later, Westbridge received a referral unlike anything Ethan had seen before. The patient arrived from another province. Multiple hospitals had evaluated him. Multiple specialists had reviewed his case. None had offered a solution. The moment the patient's file appeared, the entire trauma department became interested. Because the case wasn't trauma, it was mystery. A 23-year World University student. Severe abdominal pain, intermittent bleeding, progressive weakness. Symptoms had continued for nearly 8 months. Dozens of tests, dozens of consultations. No diagnosis, no explanation, no treatment. The patient looked exhausted, not only physically, mentally, emotionally. Months of uncertainty had taken a toll. Professor Cross personally reviewed the case. So did multiple specialists. Gastroenterology, internal medicine, radiology, surgery. Nobody found an answer. The discussion lasted hours. One theory after another appeared, then disappeared. Nothing fit perfectly. For Ethan, the situation felt fascinating, because this wasn't about surgery. It was about investigation. Medicine in its purest form. Finding the truth. That evening after finishing his shift, Ethan entered the surgical simulation system. A new notification appeared immediately. Rare diagnostic challenge detected. Difficulty. Extreme. Would you like to simulate similar cases? Ethan selected yes without hesitation. The world changed. Virtual patients appeared one after another. Rare diseases. Unusual symptoms. Hidden diagnoses. The simulation became brutal. Every mistake ended in failure. Every wrong diagnosis ended the scenario. Hour after hour passed. Then something interesting happened. One virtual patient presented symptoms nearly identical to the Westbridge case. Abdominal pain, chronic bleeding, progressive weakness. Ethan reviewed the data carefully, then noticed something. A rare vascular abnormality. Uncommon. Difficult to detect. Easy to miss. The simulation ended. Correct diagnosis. Reward granted. Rare disease recognition +2. Ethan immediately sat upright. Could it be? The next morning, he reviewed the real patient's records again. Carefully, methodically, searching for the same pattern, the same clues. Hours passed. Then he found something. A tiny abnormality hidden inside an imaging report, so small that several specialists had overlooked it. His pulse quickened. This couldn't be coincidence. Could it? For nearly 20 minutes, Ethan debated whether to speak, then remembered Noah's words. Don't think like someone trying not to fail. Think like someone trying to find the right answer. Ethan stood, picked up the file, and walked toward Professor Cross's office. A few minutes later, the trauma chief reviewed the records. Silently, carefully. The room remained quiet. Then Cross looked up. For the first time in weeks, the legendary surgeon looked genuinely interested. Explain your reasoning. Ethan took a breath, and began. Outside the office, residents continued moving through the halls. Patients continued arriving. The hospital continued functioning, completely unaware that a first-year resident might have just uncovered the answer to one of Westbridge's most puzzling medical cases. End of Chapter 42. Chapter 43, A Circumflex Euros, the hidden diagnosis. Professor Adrian Cross listened without interruption. Ethan stood across from the desk. Patient records spread between them. Imaging reports, laboratory results, consultation notes, months of failed investigations. For nearly 10 minutes, Ethan explained his reasoning. The possible vascular abnormality, the chronic bleeding pattern, the inconsistent symptoms, the overlooked imaging findings. When he finished, the office became silent. Cross reviewed the scans again. Several long minutes passed. Then he picked up the phone. Call radiology. Ethan's heartbeat accelerated. That wasn't a rejection. It wasn't approval either. But it meant the trauma chief believed the theory deserved investigation. investigation. An hour later, specialists gathered in a conference room. Radiologists, vascular surgeons, trauma physicians, internal medicine consultants. The patient's images appeared on a large screen. This time, everyone examined the suspicious area carefully, very carefully. Then one radiologist suddenly leaned forward. Wait! The room became quiet. He enlarged the image, adjusted the contrast, and there it was. A tiny vascular malformation. Rare, extremely rare. Small enough to avoid detection during routine review, yet large enough to explain the patient's symptoms. Months of uncertainty, months of suffering, finally solved. Several specialists immediately began discussing treatment options. Cross remained silent. Then his gaze shifted toward Ethan. For a brief second, pride appeared in the trauma chief's eyes. Then it vanished. Good work. Only 2 words. Yet they felt heavier than any award, because they came from Professor Adrian Cross. 3 days later, the patient underwent successful treatment. For the first time in months, recovery finally began, and Ethan learned an important lesson. Medicine wasn't only about surgery. Sometimes saving a life started with asking the right question. End of Chapter 43. Chapter 44, A Circumflex Euros. The King's Hospital. Solved diagnosis became famous throughout Westbridge. Not nationally, not publicly, but inside the hospital, everyone heard about it. A first-year exchange resident had contributed to solving a rare case. People noticed, even physicians outside trauma surgery. A week later, Ethan received another unexpected message. Official invitation. King's Royal Medical Center. His eyes widened. King's Royal Medical Center, the most prestigious hospital in the kingdom. The hospital responsible for treating royal officials, national leaders, the wealthiest citizens. Even Westbridge respected King's Hospital. The invitation wasn't permanent. Only a 3-day educational exchange, but opportunities like this were incredibly rare. Very rare. Later that day, Ethan met with Professor Cross. The trauma chief reviewed the invitation, then nodded. Go. That was all. No speech. No advice. Classic Professor Cross. 3 days later, Ethan boarded a train toward the capital district. The moment King's Royal Medical Center appeared through the window, he understood why people admired it. The hospital looked magnificent. Modern architecture, advanced technology, beautiful grounds. Everything appeared perfect. Almost too perfect. As Ethan entered the facility, a familiar notification appeared. Elite institution detected. Current difficulty increased. The surgical simulation system clearly enjoyed causing stress. Inside the hospital, young doctors from across the kingdom had gathered. Many belonged to elite families. Others graduated from prestigious universities. Competition felt intense. Then Ethan noticed a familiar name on the schedule. Dr. Evelyn Hart, guest lecturer, trauma recovery research. Apparently fate wasn't finished with her yet. End of Chapter 44. Chapter 45, A Circumflex Euros. The second meeting. The lecture hall filled quickly. Nearly every available seat became occupied. Doctors, residents, researchers, students. Everyone wanted to hear Dr. Evelyn Hart speak. Ethan understood why. Her reputation continued growing nationally. At only 27 years old, she had already achieved more than most surgeons accomplished in an entire career. The presentation began, and just like before, the audience remained completely engaged, confident, knowledgeable, professional. Evelyn commanded attention effortlessly. For nearly an hour, she discussed advanced trauma recovery strategies, new research, future treatment protocols. The content was fascinating. Even more impressive was her ability to explain complex ideas simply. When the lecture ended, attendees immediately surrounded her. Questions, conversations, networking. The crowd became enormous. Ethan had no intention of joining. Then something unexpected happened. As she prepared to leave, Evelyn suddenly paused. Her eyes landed on him. Recognition appeared. Research competition winner. Ethan blinked. She remembered him? Apparently. Dr. Hart. She smiled slightly. Ethan Vale, right? For a moment he forgot what to say. Not because she was attractive, though she certainly was, because one of the kingdom's most promising surgeons remembered his name. That felt far more shocking. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Research. Westbridge. The conference. Nothing dramatic. Nothing romantic. Just 2 young doctors discussing medicine. Yet Ethan enjoyed it, because unlike most conversations at elite hospitals, there was no competition, no comparison, no pressure, only genuine interest. Before leaving, Evelyn handed him a business card. If you ever need research advice. Then she walked away. Simple. Professional. Yet Ethan stared at the card longer than necessary. A familiar notification immediately appeared. Relationship progress updated. Evelyn Hart. Current status. Professional acquaintance. Future potential. Unknown. Ethan rolled his eyes. The system clearly enjoyed making assumptions. Still, he carefully placed the card inside his notebook, just in case. That night back in his hotel room, another notification appeared. Major story arc complete. Westbridge growth phase. New arc incoming. Kingdom Surgical Championship. Difficulty. Extreme. Expected participants. Elite surgeons nationwide. Current success probability. 17%. Ethan laughed. Only 17%. Apparently the system remained brutally honest. But after everything that had happened, he no longer feared impossible odds. Because every major achievement in his journey had started the same way, with people saying he couldn't do it. Chapter 46, A Circumflex Euros returned to Westbridge. After the King's Royal Medical Center exchange ended, Ethan returned to Westbridge with mixed emotions. The trip had only lasted 3 days, yet it felt much longer. He had seen another level of medicine, another level of competition, another level of excellence. And now, Kingdom Surgical Championship awaited. The challenge was months away, but everyone already talked about it, because it was the largest competition for young surgeons in the kingdom. Winning meant recognition, prestige, career opportunities, and perhaps most importantly, access to the kingdom's most elite training programs. The moment Ethan arrived back at Westbridge, reality returned. From alerts, emergency consultations, patient rounds. Hospitals didn't care about conferences. Patients didn't care about awards. hospitals. People still needed treatment. That afternoon, Ethan joined Professor Cross during rounds. One patient, then another, then another. The pace remained relentless. Yet Ethan noticed something. Professor Cross had begun asking him more questions. Not simple questions. Difficult questions. Questions usually directed towards senior residents. Treatment plans. Surgical approaches. Risk assessments. At first, Ethan struggled. Then gradually, he improved. By the end of the week, he could answer nearly half of them correctly. Progress. Small, but meaningful. On Friday evening, Noah Bennett appeared carrying 2 coffees. Without asking, he placed one on Ethan's desk. You're studying too much. Ethan looked at the mountain of research papers. You sound like Mason. Noah laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Conversation shifted toward the Kingdom Surgical Championship. For the first time, Noah looked serious. Are you planning to compete? Ethan nodded. Of course. Noah leaned back. Good. Something about his tone felt strange. Then Noah continued. Because I'll be there too. The challenge wasn't hostile. It didn't need to be. Both understood exactly what it meant. The rivalry would continue, only on a much larger stage. That night, Ethan entered the surgical simulation system. A new section had appeared. Kingdom Surgical Championship. Preparation module. Difficulty. Extreme. Estimated training hours. 300. Ethan stared. 300 hours? The system had finally lost its mind. Then again, competition involved the best young surgeons in the kingdom. Perhaps the number was reasonable. Reluctantly, he pressed begin. The next phase of training had started. End of Chapter 46. Chapter 47. A circumflex euros. The champion candidate. The Kingdom Surgical Championship preparation module was unlike anything Ethan had experienced before. The system no longer focused on a single skill. Instead, everything came at once. Trauma surgery, emergency medicine, clinical diagnosis, leadership, research, communication. Every weakness was exposed. Every mistake punished. A simulation became brutal. One mistake during surgery, failure. Wrong diagnosis, failure. Poor leadership decision, failure. The system showed absolutely no mercy. For the next 2 weeks, Ethan's schedule became absurd. Hospital, training, sleep, repeat, nothing else. Even Noah started looking concerned. You know normal people rest occasionally, right? Ethan didn't even look up from his notes. I'll rest after the championship. Noah sighed. That's not how rest works. Unfortunately, Ethan ignored him. 3 days later, the monthly evaluation meeting arrived. The entire exchange program gathered inside the conference hall. Everyone knew the rankings would change. The question was by how much. The display activated. Monthly evaluation rankings. 3rd place, Lena Carter. Score, 93. 2nd place, Noah Bennett. Score, 95. Murmurs spread throughout the room. 95. An incredible score. Then, 1st place appeared. 1st place, Ethan Vale. Score, 96. Silence. Again. The room seemed to enjoy becoming silent whenever Ethan's name appeared. Several residents looked shocked. Others looked impressed. A few looked annoyed. Competition had become serious. After the meeting ended, Ethan expected congratulations. Instead, Professor Cross stopped him. Walk. The trauma chief led him through several hospital corridors. Neither spoke. Eventually they arrived at an observation deck overlooking multiple operating rooms. Professor Cross folded his arms. Do you know why Noah is dangerous? The question caught Ethan completely off guard. No, sir. Cross looked toward one of the operating rooms. Because he improves every month. The statement seemed obvious. Then Cross continued. So do you. Ethan remained silent. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the trauma chief delivered words Ethan would never forget. Talent creates potential. His gaze remained fixed on the operating rooms. Consistency creates champions. The sentence struck Ethan harder than expected, because it described his entire journey. Not talent, not luck. Consistency. Thousands of simulation hours. Countless failures. Endless repetition. A gradual improvement nobody noticed, until suddenly they did. Later that night, after entering the system, a golden notification appeared. Major milestone reached. Elite resident status confirmed. Current evaluation score, 96. New title unlocked. Champion candidate. For several moments, Ethan simply stared. Champion candidate. Months ago, he had been an overlooked resident from a small hospital. Now the system considered him a legitimate contender for the kingdom's greatest surgical competition. The journey felt unreal. Yet deep down, he knew something important. The championship hadn't started. The real rivals hadn't appeared. And the most difficult battles still waited ahead. Far ahead. Chapter 48. A circumflex euros, the national team selection. 1 month remained before the Kingdom Surgical Championship. Across the kingdom, hospitals were finalizing their representatives. Westbridge Medical Center was no exception. Unlike previous competitions, however, this event was different. Each institution could only send 5 competitors. 5 out of hundreds of residents. Competition for selection was nearly as difficult as the championship itself. Monday morning, Professor Cross gathered all exchange residents and Westbridge candidates. The atmosphere felt tense. Everyone understood what was at stake. The trauma chief stood before them. No one receives a position. The room became silent. You earn it. A familiar Cross speech. Short, brutal, effective. A large screen illuminated behind him. Selection assessment. Duration, 7 days. Clinical evaluation. Technical skills. Leadership. Emergency management. Overall score determined selection. Immediately, discussions erupted. The pressure had arrived. For the next week, every resident was evaluated. Case discussions, emergency simulations, patient management, operating room performance. Every action mattered. Every mistake mattered. By the 6th day, exhaustion spread through the department. Even Noah looked tired. How are you doing? Ethan asked. Barely. Alive. For the first time, they both laughed. Apparently, elite residents were still human. Finally, the results arrived. Westbridge Championship Team. 1. Noah Bennett. 2. Ethan Vale. 3. Lena Carter. 4. Marcus Hale. 5. Daniel West. Selected. Ethan exhaled slowly. Another step completed. This one felt different, because now the championship wasn't a possibility. It was reality. End of Chapter 48. Chapter 49. a circumflex euros, the surgical labyrinth. The championship organizers released preliminary information 1 week later. Most participants expected traditional events, surgical simulations, clinical exams, research presentations. Instead, they received something unexpected. The surgical labyrinth. Nobody knew exactly what it meant. Rumors spread immediately. Complex medical scenarios, multiple specialties, unexpected emergencies. No official explanation existed. Naturally, everyone became nervous. That evening, the surgical simulation system activated automatically. Major event detected. The surgical labyrinth. Difficulty. Extreme. New training environment available. Ethan immediately accepted. The world around him transformed. Unlike previous simulations, this environment resembled an entire hospital. Emergency departments, operating rooms, intensive care units, research centers, everything connected. A notification appeared. Objective, survive 48 hours. Ethan frowned. Survive? That didn't sound reassuring. The challenge began instantly. Patients arrived, then more patients, then emergencies, then disasters. One department affected another. A delayed diagnosis created a surgical complication. A surgical complication affected intensive care. Every decision created consequences. The complexity felt overwhelming. For the first several attempts, Ethan failed repeatedly. Patients deteriorated. Resources became exhausted. Critical mistakes accumulated. The system showed no mercy. Then slowly, patterns emerged. Medicine wasn't individual departments. It was one connected system. Every doctor affected every patient. Every decision created consequences. After 20 simulation hours, Ethan finally completed the challenge. Result: pass. Evaluation: excellent. Reward granted. Systems thinking +5. Hospital management +4. Leadership +3. A new realization appeared. The championship wouldn't test knowledge. It would test understanding. End of Chapter 49. Chapter 50a. Circumflex euros. The Royal Invitation. 3 weeks before the championship, an official letter arrived, not an email, not a message, a physical letter, which immediately attracted attention. The envelope carried a royal seal. Several residents gathered around, including Noah. What did you do now? Ethan wasn't sure. Carefully, he opened the letter. Inside was an invitation. Kingdom Surgical Championship. Official competitor confirmation. His participation had been formally approved. The letter contained event details, rules, schedules, requirements. Then Ethan noticed something unusual. A special section appeared near the end. Championship opening banquet. Attendance required. Hosted by Kingdom Medical Council, Royal Health Authority, King's Royal Medical Center. The scale suddenly felt much larger. This wasn't merely a competition. It was a national event. The kingdom's future medical leaders would gather in one place. Future department chiefs, future professors, future innovators. The realization made everything feel more serious. That evening, Ethan visited the hospital rooftop, something he occasionally did when he needed time to think. The city light stretched into the distance. For several minutes, he stood quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened. St. Rowan, the trauma challenge, Westridge, Professor Cross, Noah, the conference, the research competition. The journey felt impossible, yet it was real. A notification appeared before his eyes. Main story arc complete. Resident growth arc. Current status: elite resident. Next arc: Kingdom Surgical Championship. Difficulty: nightmare. Estimated success probability: 34%. Ethan laughed. 34%. The highest probability the system had ever given him before a major challenge. And somehow, that felt far more dangerous. Because for the first time, the system believed he might actually win. Far below, ambulances continued arriving at Westbridge Medical Center. Patients continued fighting for their lives. And tomorrow Ethan would return to work. Because no matter how important the championship became, he was still a doctor first. Competition could wait. His patients could not. Chapter 51a. Circumflex euros. The Banquet of Rivals. 1 week before the Kingdom Surgical Championship, Ethan arrived at the Royal Grand Convention Center. Tonight wasn't a competition, not officially, yet everyone present understood the truth. This was the first battlefield, the championship opening banquet, the largest gathering of young medical talent in the kingdom. Elite residents, young attending physicians, research prodigies, future department chiefs, all gathered beneath one roof. The ballroom itself was enormous. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the ceiling. Elegant decorations filled the hall. Medical leaders from across the kingdom moved between groups. For someone from St. Rowan, the scene felt surreal. Even Noah seemed impressed. First time? Ethan nodded. Good. Why? Because after tonight, you'll never be impressed by anything again. That sounded about right. As attendees entered, giant digital displays showed competitor profiles, achievements, research publications, competition records. The information looked intimidating. Very intimidating. Several competitors already had national reputations. Some had published dozens of papers. Others had won international competitions. One profile immediately caught Ethan's attention. Lucas Sterling, King's Royal Medical Center, current national champion, Kingdom Surgical Championship winner. Previous year, research publications. 23. Age: 28. Ethan stared. 23 publications. At 28 years old, the number felt absurd. A familiar system notification appeared. Elite rival detected. Lucas Sterling. Threat level: very high. Current win probability against opponent: 18%. Ethan sighed. Apparently the system enjoyed destroying confidence. Then another profile appeared. Sophia Langford, National Surgical Academy, Emergency Medicine Champion, Trauma Assessment Record Holder. Threat level: very high. Win probability: 21%. The list continued, and somehow things became worse. By the end of the evening, Ethan counted at least 10 competitors capable of winning the championship. For the first time, victory felt genuinely difficult. Then something unexpected happened. A familiar voice appeared behind him. Looking intimidated, Ethan turned. Evelyn Hart, dressed formally rather than in hospital scrubs. The change caught him slightly off guard. Just realistic. She laughed. Good answer. The conversation flowed naturally. Research, medicine, the championship. For nearly 20 minutes. Longer than any previous conversation they had shared. At some point, Ethan realized something. Talking with Evelyn felt easy. No competition. No pressure. Just genuine conversation. Before leaving, She offered one final piece of advice. Don't focus on the strongest competitors. Ethan looked curious. Why? Evelyn smiled. Because while you're watching them, they're watching you. Then she walked away, leaving Ethan with a lot to think about. Chapter 52 at Circumflex Euros, the first trial. Kingdom Surgical Championship officially began the next morning. Hundreds of competitors filled the massive competition arena. Doctors, judges, medical leaders, observers. The atmosphere felt electric. A giant display dominated the center stage. Kingdom Surgical Championship, the event that every young surgeon dreamed about. The event that could change careers. The event Ethan had spent months preparing for. The opening ceremony remained brief. No lengthy speeches, no unnecessary delays. The organizers understood why everyone was there. Competition. The first challenge appeared on the screen. Round 1. Clinical Elimination Assessment. Participants remaining. 120. After round 1, 60. The room became silent. Half the competitors would disappear immediately. Brutal. The challenge began. Each participant entered an isolated assessment room. Complex medical cases appeared one after another. Diagnosis, treatment, complications, ethics, emergency management. The questions felt relentless. Some cases involved trauma. Others involved surgery. Several combined multiple specialties. Exactly the type of challenge the surgical simulation system had prepared him for. Hours passed. One case after another. One challenge after another. By the end, Ethan felt mentally exhausted. Then the waiting began. Perhaps the most difficult part. Competitors gathered in the central hall. Nobody knew the results. Nobody knew who survived. Finally, the giant screen activated. Qualified competitors. Names appeared rapidly. Lucas Sterling, Sophia Langford, Noah Bennett, Lena Carter, Marcus Hale. One by one, Athena Euros, Ethan Vale, qualified. A small wave of relief washed through him. Round 1 complete. Yet something else immediately caught his attention. Next to each name appeared rankings. Lucas Sterling A, Circumflex Euros rank 1. Sophia Langford A, Circumflex Euros rank 2. Noah Bennett at Circumflex Euros rank 5. Then Ethan found himself. Rank 8. The room became noticeably quieter. Several competitors looked toward him. Apparently many had expected the unknown resident from St. Rowan to struggle. Instead, he had entered the top 10. A golden system notification appeared. Round 1 complete. Current ranking 8. Championship win probability 34%. A Circumflex 41%. Elite competitors recognizing you. Status active. For the first time during the championship, Ethan smiled. Because he wasn't here simply to participate. And after today, everyone else finally understood that too. Chapter 53A. Circumflex Euros, the surgical labyrinth. The second round of the Kingdom Surgical Championship began the following morning. Unlike the first round, nobody knew what to expect. The organizers had revealed only one thing. Round 2, the surgical labyrinth. The name alone sounded intimidating. Now Ethan finally understood why. More than 60 competitors gathered inside an enormous simulation facility. Several floors, dozens of rooms, hundreds of medical scenarios. The entire building had been transformed into a virtual hospital. Emergency departments, operating rooms, intensive care units, medical wards, everything connected. A giant screen illuminated the central hall. Competition rules. Duration, 12 hours. Objective, manage patients, solve emergencies, coordinate resources, maintain outcomes. Failure results in elimination. The room became silent. 12 hours. This wasn't a test. It was survival. A familiar notification appeared before Ethan's eyes. Surgical labyrinth detected. Simulation similarity, 87%. Ethan nearly smiled. The system had prepared him for something very close to this challenge. For once, luck seemed to be on his side. Competition began. Immediately. No countdown. No warning. Competitors entered assigned sections of the virtual hospital. The chaos started instantly. Patients appeared one after another. Chest pain, abdominal trauma, postoperative complications, sepsis, respiratory failure. Pace felt relentless. Every patient required decisions. Every decision affected future events. An incorrect diagnosis created complications. A delayed treatment caused deterioration. Poor resource allocation affected multiple departments. The challenge wasn't medicine, it was systems management. Exactly what the simulation had been teaching him. 3 hours passed. Then 5. Then 7. Competitors slowly disappeared. One mistake. Eliminated. Another mistake. Eliminated. The giant leaderboard continuously updated. 60 competitors. 52. 44. 37. The pressure intensified. At hour 8, Ethan encountered his most difficult case. A patient arrived with severe abdominal pain, low blood pressure, fever. The symptoms seemed straightforward. Several possible diagnoses appeared. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. The details didn't fit perfectly. A less experienced Ethan might have chosen the obvious answer. The months of simulation training had changed him. He investigated further. Additional imaging. Additional testing. Then the truth emerged. A rare postoperative complication. One that would have been missed without deeper analysis. Correct diagnosis. Correct treatment. The patient stabilized. A golden notification appeared. Advanced clinical reasoning activated. Decision quality increased. Ethan ignored it. There wasn't time. The challenge continued. At hour 10, another crisis appeared. An ICU resource shortage. Too many critical patients. Not enough staff. Not enough beds. Competitors across the kingdom struggled. Several high-ranked participants were eliminated, including a former national finalist. The leaderboard changed again. Top 10 remaining. Lucas Sterling, Sophia Langford, Noah Bennett, Ethan Vale. The familiar names remained. The strongest competitors had survived. No surprise there. The final 2 hours became brutal. Every scenario seemed designed to break people. Complex diagnoses. Unexpected complications. Simultaneous emergencies. Even Ethan felt exhausted. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Then finally, the timer reached 0. The challenge ended. The remaining competitors gathered inside the central auditorium. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked relieved. The giant screen illuminated. Round 2 results. 10th place, 9th place, 8th place. Names appeared appeared one by one. Then Ethan saw his 4th place, Ethan Vale. A wave of relief washed over him. Top 5, among the best young surgeons in the kingdom. Yet the results weren't finished. The top 3 appeared. 3rd place, Sophia Langford. 2nd place, Noah Bennett. The room became quiet. Only one name remained. 1st place, Lucas Sterling, the defending champion. Still number 1. The challenge ahead remained enormous. A system notification appeared. Round 2 complete. Parrot rank 4. Championship win. Probability 41%, circumflex 48%. Elite rival interest increased. Lucas Sterling, red assessment updated. For the first time, the system wasn't showing impossible odds. Ethan stared at the number. 48%, nearly half. Slowly, he smiled. Because after months of preparation, the championship was no longer a dream. It was within reach. And tomorrow, the semifinals would begin. The surgical simulation system. Chapter 54, a circumflex Euros. The semifinals. The morning after the surgical labyrinth challenge, Ethan woke before his alarm. For several moments, he remained lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of his hotel room. The previous day had been exhausting. 12 continuous hours of complex medical decision making had pushed every competitor to their limits. Even now his mind felt tired. Yet despite the fatigue, a feeling of excitement lingered beneath the surface. He had survived. Not only survived, but finished 4th among the best young surgeons in the kingdom. Months ago, such a result would have seemed impossible. A first-year resident from St. Rowan Community Hospital competing against nationally recognized talents. Most people would have laughed at the idea. Now he stood only 2 rounds away from the championship title. After a quick breakfast, Ethan arrived at the competition venue. The atmosphere had changed dramatically compared to previous rounds. Only 20 competitors remained. The week had already been eliminated. What remained were the true elites. Lucas Sterling sat quietly near the front of the auditorium reviewing documents. The defending champion appeared calm, as if the pressure did not affect him at all. Nearby, Sophia Langford discussed emergency medicine protocols with another competitor. Noah Bennett stood by the coffee station, looking far more relaxed than anyone else. As Ethan approached, Noah grinned. "You look terrible." Ethan accepted a cup of coffee and shook his head. "Thanks. I'm serious. You don't look much better." Noah laughed. "That's because none of us slept." For a moment, both men simply stood there watching the other competitors arrive. The tension in the room was obvious. Nobody talked loudly. Nobody joked. The semifinals carried too much weight. A few minutes later, the organizers entered the stage. The audience immediately quieted. A giant display illuminated behind them. Semifinal round. Complex surgical management. The title alone was enough to make several competitors nervous. The lead organizer stepped forward. "The semifinal challenge will test your ability to manage surgical patients from admission to recovery." A new screen appeared. Each participant would receive a detailed patient case, diagnosis, treatment planning, surgical strategy, post-operative management, complication control. Every stage would be evaluated. "This challenge is not about speed," the organizer continued. "It is about judgment." Ethan immediately understood the danger. Judgment was difficult to measure. There were often multiple correct answers. Small differences could determine victory or defeat. Competition began shortly afterward. Each participant entered a private evaluation room. A virtual patient file appeared on Ethan's monitor. Male, 36 years old, severe abdominal trauma following an industrial accident, multiple organ injuries, potential vascular involvement, high surgical risk. Ethan's eyes narrowed. This was not a simple case. The organizers had essentially created a scenario that required trauma surgery, critical care management, and long-term recovery planning simultaneously. For the next several hours, Ethan worked through every aspect of the case. He analyzed imaging results, reviewed laboratory values, planned surgical approaches, considered alternative treatments, evaluated possible complications. The challenge felt surprisingly similar to the advanced simulations inside the surgical simulation system. Again and again, he found himself recalling lessons learned during hundreds of training sessions. A less experienced version of himself would have focused solely on the operation. Now he understood something more important. Successful surgery was only one part of patient survival. Post-operative care mattered. Rehabilitation mattered. Complication prevention mattered. Medicine was a complete journey, not a single procedure. As the final hours passed, Ethan felt his confidence steadily increasing. For perhaps the first time during the championship, he wasn't simply reacting. He was thinking clearly, trusting his experience, trusting his training, trusting himself. When the evaluation finally ended, he leaned back in his chair and released a long breath. Whatever happened next, he had given everything. A familiar golden notification suddenly appeared before his eyes. Semifinal challenge complete. Performance evaluation, excellent. Clinical judgment +5. Surgical planning +4. Patient management +3. Current championship ranking projection updated. The numbers beneath the notification remained hidden. For once, the system refused to reveal additional information. Ethan smiled. Apparently, even the system wanted to keep the suspense alive. Outside the evaluation room, competitors slowly gathered in the main hall. Everyone looked exhausted. Everyone looked anxious. The results would be announced soon, and by the end of the day, only 10 competitors would remain. Among them would be the future champion of the kingdom. Ethan intended to be one of them. Chapter 55, a circumflex Euros, the top 10. The semifinal results were announced that evening. More than 100 competitors had entered the championship. Only 10 remained. The auditorium felt unusually quiet as participants gathered before the massive display screen. Every competitor understood the significance of this moment. Making the top 10 guaranteed national recognition. Winning the championship would make history. Ethan sat beside Noah Bennett near the middle rows. Neither spoke much. The tension was obvious. One by one, names began appearing on the screen. Lucas Sterling, Sophia Langford, Noah Bennett, Lena Carter, Marcus Hale. The audience applauded each announcement. Then Ethan's name appeared. Ethan Vale, Westbridge Medical Center Exchange Program, qualified. A wave of relief passed through him. He had done it. Top 10. Months ago, he had been struggling through night shifts at St. Rowan Community Hospital. Now he stood among the 10 best young surgeons in the kingdom. The realization still felt unreal. After the results ceremony ended, competitors received schedules for the next stage. The final challenge would begin in 2 days. Until then, participants were free to rest and prepare. Unfortunately, Ethan had no intention of resting. That evening he entered the surgical simulation system. A new environment appeared immediately. Final championship module. Difficulty. Nightmare. Estimated success rate. 39%. Ethan nearly laughed. The system was somehow becoming more pessimistic. The simulation began instantly. Complicated surgeries. Unexpected complications. Leadership crises. Rare diagnoses. Every challenge pushed him further than before. Hours passed. Failures accumulated. Then improvements followed. By midnight, Ethan finally exited the system, exhausted, but stronger. The championship was approaching, and he intended to be ready. End of Chapter 55. The Surgical Simulation System. Chapter 56a. Circumflex Euros. The Final Challenge. The final stage of the Kingdom Surgical Championship began 2 days later. The venue had changed. Instead of conference halls and classrooms, competitors arrived at the Royal Medical Simulation Center, the most advanced training facility in the kingdom. The building itself looked impressive. Modern architecture, advanced technology, state-of-the-art surgical suites, everything designed to replicate real hospitals. The 10 finalists gathered inside the central auditorium. Medical leaders from across the kingdom filled the audience. Department chiefs, researchers, hospital directors, even representatives from international institutions. The pressure was immense. A giant display illuminated above the stage. Championship final. Multidisciplinary surgical crisis. Immediately, several competitors frowned. This wasn't a single specialty challenge. It involved everything. Trauma, general surgery, critical care, emergency medicine, leadership, hospital management. The organizers explained the rules. Each competitor would lead a complete medical team through a complex disaster scenario. Patients would arrive continuously. Resources would be limited. Complications would emerge unexpectedly. The goal wasn't simply treating patients. The goal was saving as many lives as possible. Ethan immediately recognized the format. The surgical labyrinth. Only larger. Much larger. A familiar system notification appeared. Simulation similarity. 94%. For the first time, Ethan felt genuinely grateful toward the system. Thousands of hours of preparation had led to this moment. The challenge began. Chaos erupted immediately. Mass casualty incident. Multiple critical patients. Insufficient operating rooms. Limited blood products. Equipment failures. Every competitor faced overwhelming pressure. Hours passed. One decision after another. One crisis after another. Ethan focused completely. No distractions. No hesitation. Only medicine. Only patience. The same way Professor Cross had taught him. When the final scenario ended, every competitor looked exhausted, mentally drained, physically exhausted, emotionally spent. Now only one thing remained. The results. Chapter 57a. Circumflex Euros. The Champion. The final results ceremony took place that evening. The auditorium was completely full. Doctors from every major hospital attended. Medical journalists filled the back rows. The atmosphere felt electric. The future champion would be announced tonight. Ethan sat quietly among the finalists. For once, even Noah Bennett looked nervous. The giant display activated. Final rankings. The countdown began. 10th place, 9th place, 8th place. The names appeared one by one. The audience applauded respectfully. Then the top 5 appeared. Marcus Hale, Lena Carter, Sophia Langford. 4 competitors remained. Then came 3rd place, Noah Bennett. The audience erupted. Westbridge residents immediately stood and applauded. Noah accepted the result with a smile. No disappointment, no frustration, only pride. Then the screen changed again. 2nd place, Lucas Sterling, the defending champion. For the first time, all evening, genuine surprise spread throughout the auditorium. If Lucas wasn't first, then only one name remained. Silence filled the room. Complete silence. Ethan's heartbeat accelerated. No, impossible. Then, the final result appeared. Kingdom Surgical Champion, Ethan Vale, St. Rowan Community Hospital. For several seconds nobody moved. The result felt unbelievable. A first-year resident, from a small community hospital, standing above every elite institution in the kingdom. Then applause exploded throughout the auditorium. Doctors stood. Residents cheered. Medical leaders nodded approvingly. The entire hall erupted. Ethan remained frozen. Not because of the trophy. Not because of the recognition. Because he remembered where the journey had begun. A tired resident. A small apartment. A mysterious system. A dream that seemed impossible. And now he stood here. National champion. A golden notification appeared before his eyes. Main story arc complete. Kingdom Surgical Championship completed. Rewards granted. Evaluation score 100. Legendary status unlocked. Then another notification appeared. One unlike anything he had ever seen before. New main arc available. International Medical Summit. Difficulty unknown. For the first time since obtaining the surgical simulation system, no success probability appeared. No predictions. No estimates. Only one word. Unknown. Ethan smiled. Because somewhere beyond the kingdom, a much larger world was waiting, and his journey was only beginning. Chapter 58a. Circumflex Euros. The Champion's Return. The day after the championship, Ethan returned to Westbridge Medical Center. For the first time in his life, people recognized him before he introduced himself. Medical journals had already published articles about the competition. Hospital networks discussed the results. Even doctors from departments Ethan had never visited knew his name. Kingdom Surgical Champion. The title sounded unreal. As he entered the trauma department, conversations immediately stopped. Several residents turned toward him. Then applause began. One resident started it. Then another. Soon the entire department joined. Ethan stood awkwardly in the middle of the hallway. He hated being the center of attention. Unfortunately, everyone else seemed determined to make it happen. You look uncomfortable. The familiar voice belonged belong to Noah Bennett. Ethan sighed. I am uncomfortable. Noah laughed. Good. It means you're still normal. The celebration continued throughout the morning. Nurses congratulated him. Residents shook his hand. Even attending physicians offered praise. Then Professor Adrian Cross appeared. Instant silence. The entire department became quiet. Cross looked directly at Ethan. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the trauma chief nodded once. Well done. Only 2 words. Yet somehow they meant more than every trophy he had received, because they came from the man who had taught him what excellence looked like. Later that evening, Ethan entered the surgical simulation system. A golden notification immediately appeared. Kingdom Champion status confirmed. New authority level unlocked. Elite Medical Network access available. New mentor candidates detected. Ethan frowned. New mentors. The screen expanded. Several unfamiliar names appeared. International trauma surgeons. World-renowned researchers. Leaders of famous medical institutions. For the first time, the system displayed people beyond the kingdom. The next stage of his journey had officially begun. End of Chapter 58. The Surgical Simulation System. Chapter 59. A Circumflex Euros. The Invitation from Abroad. 3 days later, Ethan received a message unlike anything he had ever seen. The center was a Westbridge. It wasn't King's Royal Medical Center. It wasn't even located within the kingdom. The message originated from abroad. The International Medical Summit. The same event mentioned by the system after the championship. Ethan opened the document carefully. His eyes widened almost immediately. The summit would bring together young doctors from more than 30 countries. Trauma specialists, researchers, surgical innovators, future leaders of medicine. Only a handful of representatives from each nation would be invited, and Ethan's name appeared on the list. For several moments, he simply stared at the screen. The scale felt impossible. Competing nationally was one thing. Internationally, that was different. Very different. Later that day, he discussed the invitation with Professor Cross. The trauma chief reviewed the document quietly, then placed it back on the desk. You should go. Ethan wasn't surprised. Cross had always pushed him toward growth. Still, uncertainty remained. Competition level will be much higher. Cross nodded. Good. That was his entire answer. Good. For Professor Cross, difficulty wasn't a problem. Difficulty was the point. As Ethan left the office, he encountered Dr. Sophia Reynolds, the research director. Had already heard the news. Apparently everyone had. Congratulations. Thanks. She smiled. Try not to embarrass the kingdom. Ethan laughed. I'll do my best. For the first time since winning the championship, genuine excitement returned. A larger stage, stronger competitors, greater challenges. The journey wasn't ending, it was expanding. End of Chapter 59. The Surgical Simulation System. Chapter 60. Circumflex Euros. A World Beyond. The International Medical Summit. It would begin in 2 months. For most people, that sounded like plenty of time. For Ethan, it felt terrifyingly short. The world beyond the kingdom was enormous. Medical systems differed. Training methods differed. Competition standards differed. He had no idea what awaited him. The surgical simulation system seemed to understand his concerns. The moment he entered that evening, a completely new environment appeared. International Medical Training Program. Difficulty. Catastrophic. Ethan stared. Catastrophic? The system was inventing new difficulty levels. That couldn't be a good sign. The simulation loaded. A modern hospital appeared around him. Everything looked unfamiliar. Different equipment. Different protocols. Different procedures. Even the language displayed on several monitors was foreign. A notification appeared. Objective. Adapt. For the next several hours, Ethan struggled. The challenge wasn't medicine. It was flexibility. Learning new systems. New methods. New approaches. Again and again he failed. Again and again he restarted. The experience reminded him of his first weeks at Westbridge. Except harder. Much harder. Finally, after dozens of attempts, he completed the simulation. Result. Pass. Barely. The system displayed another notification. International Readiness Assessment. Current readiness. 43%. Ethan nearly laughed. After becoming national champion, he was still only 43% ready. Apparently the world was much larger than he realized. Before leaving the simulation, one final message appeared. Important future rivals detected. Status. Locked. Important future allies detected. Status. Locked. Important future relationship route detected. Status. Locked. Ethan rolled his eyes. Some things never changed. Outside his apartment window, the lights of capital city stretched toward the horizon. Beyond those lights lay other countries, other hospitals, other champions. For years, Ethan's dream had been simple. Become a great surgeon. Now for the first time, he realized how small that dream truly was. Because somewhere beyond the kingdom, the world's best doctors were waiting, and soon, he would meet them.